good morning. My name is Dr. Deepak Marva, and today I shall be explaining to you some basic issues related to your MCI screening exam. I shall be explaining to you a simple topic by the name of mitral stenosis. Kindly have a look at the board so that you can understand the fundamentals and answer the MCQ properly. Well, the primary interest is on a commonest valvular lesion in India, that is mitral stenosis, when it comes to rheumatic etiology. The number one cause for low cardiac output failure in our country is the topic that we're going to study, mitral stenosis. High cardiac output failure, anemia obviously, but then when it comes to low cardiac output, mitral stenosis is the primary reason. All of you are aware as doctors that the normal size of the mitral valve orifice would be approximately 4 to 6 square centimeter. In mitral stenosis, the orifice will obviously become relatively smaller. So if you look at the sketch that I made out before you, I am trying to show that on the right hand side the tricuspid valve is of normal size, so a proper 130 ml of blood will be able to enter from the right atria to the right ventricle. However, on the left hand side, I am showing a narrowing of the mitral valve orifice, because of which you can see that the amount of blood that will be entering in the left atria will be normal. But when it comes to the entry of blood into the left ventricle, the amount of blood will be significantly reduced, and the amount of blood that will be entering here will be directly related to the orifice. Normal size of the mitral valve orifice is 4 to 6 square centimeter. Symptoms will usually begin when the size of the opening will be less than approximately 2 square centimeter. Well, one of the reasons why these patients will come to you will be because of the congestion in the left atrium. This congestion in the left atria will contribute to development of congestion in the pulmonary veins of the patient, and congestion in the pulmonary veins will translate into development of pulmonary edema. Once there is a development of pulmonary edema in the patient will feel breathless, especially at night time, which would be referred to as orthopnea, because there would be development of difficulty in breathing in a supine position. Therefore, when it comes to clinical symptoms that are seen in patients of mitral stenosis, these patients will always be having complaints of effort intolerance. This effort intolerance would especially be coming in because of the fact that there is a low cardiac output in the patient, less blood comes in, less goes out. The second complaint that would be seen in these patients would be development of difficulty in breathing. Initially, this difficulty in breathing might be seen only on physical exercise, but later on the difficulty in breathing might translate into dyspnea grade 3 or dyspnea grade 4. Dyspnea grade 3 is said to be present when the patient is experiencing difficulty in breathing at even ordinary activity, like for example, if patient is going to the washroom and is feeling breathless, that would be dyspnea grade 3. Or let me say, if a patient is changing his clothes, and when he is changing his clothes, that is when there is development of difficulty in breathing, or he feels breathless, that's dyspnea grade 3. 4 is obviously at rest, but I just wanted to highlight that there would be a progressive increase in the difficulty in breathing of the patient. The third reason why these patients will primarily come to you will be because of the fact that whenever this patient will lie in supine position, there will be worsening of the pulmonary edema of the patient, that is referred to as orthopnea. Because of the fact that the symptoms are more at night, parents will always say that, doctor, our child, because I am saying child here because mitral stenosis could be seen in a child secondary to rheumatic etiology. Though overall the most common valvular lesion after rheumatic etiology in children is mitral regurgitation, after the age of 18 years is usually mitral stenosis, but mitral stenosis per se, the overall incidence is higher than that of mitral regurgitation. Now in these patients, there will be a development of difficulty in breathing, especially at night time, that would be paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea. Usually these are the 4 complaints with which the patient would be coming. But as the size of the left atria will become relatively bigger, in fact I can use a different board for that. When the size of the left atria will become relatively bigger, then in these patients there will be pressure on the recurrent laryngeal nerve. Because of the pressure on the recurrent laryngeal nerve, the complaints of these patients will be in the form of development of hoarseness of voice. This basic complaint where a patient of mitral stenosis is exhibiting a hoarseness of voice. is referred to as Ortner syndrome. This is a manifestation that is encountered with patients of mitral stenosis. All patients of mitral stenosis, because of progressive damage to the left atria, can also have development of a arrhythmia by the name of atrial fibrillation. Because of this atrial fibrillation, there can be development of symptoms like palpitations, because the heart would be racing. This is a tachyarrhythmia, so the heart would be racing. A fast beating heart usually causes a fall in blood pressure, so these patients would also be developing syncope. Because of the fact that the left atria could be having development of clots. Remember I said atrial fibrillation, the atria twitching. The twitching activity can contribute to development of clots. And once the clots are formed in the left atria of the patient, these can basically embolize to the systemic circulation and can cause development of embolic stroke. No other valvular lesion contributes to development of embolic stroke unlike mitral stenosis. Therefore, this patient could be having a development of a hemiplegia or a quadriplegia depending upon which territory or which blood vessel in the brain is involved. But overall, I can say the fact that when it comes to mitral stenosis, this valvular lesion is notorious enough to cause even manifestations of embolic stroke and atrial fibrillation. The symptoms of these patients in future can worsen because of the fact that if you look at this diagram, you can see the fact that there is a pulmonary edema. And this pulmonary edema will most of the time be long-standing pulmonary edema. Because of the fact that the patient will be having a long-standing pulmonary edema will contribute to development of hypoxia. This hypoxia will then contribute to development of pulmonary artery constriction. From physiology, I can say, hypoxia causes dilation of all blood vessels in the body, except one, the pulmonary artery. The pulmonary artery does not dilate, but rather it constricts in response to hypoxia. And when the pulmonary artery will constrict, the patient will have an increase in the pressure in the pulmonary artery, that is a development of pulmonary artery hypertension. And due to this pulmonary artery hypertension, these patients will then be having a development of gradual onset right ventricular hypertrophy and even a subsequent right ventricular decompensation. Please remember, mitral stenosis, the lesion is on the left, but the back pressure changes that I have shown here before you will ultimately cause compromisation of the right ventricle of the patient. And because the right ventricle of this patient will be affected, therefore these patients could be having development of congested neck veins. Apart from congested neck veins, these patients will also be having back pressure increasing in the inferior vena cava. Therefore these patients will have development of hepatomegaly. Obviously, patient cannot say the word hepatomegaly, so patient will rather complain of fullness in the right hypochondrium or pain or tenderness in the right hypochondrium. And these patients will ultimately develop swelling in both the feet, that would be a pitting fetal edema. Therefore, when it comes to mitral stenosis, the usual symptoms that are asked in the exam are usually from point number 5 onwards: Ortner syndrome, atrial fibrillation, embolic stroke causing neurological manifestations, and then right ventricular decompensation resulting in development of pedal edema. When I get a patient with this kind of a profile, I shall be auscultating the patient. Let us now look at the auscultatory findings that are seen in patients of mitral stenosis. In this patient on auscultation, I shall first be listening to S1, and most of the time in patients of mitral stenosis, the first heart sound happens to be loud. Let us see why. In patients of mitral stenosis, as you can see, there is increase in the pressure of the left atria. You can see the physical obstruction. Because of this physical obstruction, the pressure in the left atria will increase. Because of the increased pressure in the left atria, there will be a faster opening of the mitral valve of the patient. And because of the fact that there will be a faster opening of the mitral valve of the patient, there will also be a development of faster elastic recoil of the valve. And because of the fact that there is a faster opening and a faster elastic recoil of the mitral valve, there will be a development of loud S1 in the patient. Now let me say, if there is development of calcification in the valve, then the development of calcification in the valve will result in decrease in the speed of recoil, and because of the fact that there is a decrease in the mobility of the valve because of the calcification, these patients will be ending up with development of a soft S1. So in most patients of mitral stenosis, you have a loud S1. But in the question, they can not only ask you about a loud S1, they can ask you about a soft S1 also. Soft S1 in mitral stenosis implies that there is a calcification in the mitral valve of the patient. The reason for this is decreased mobility, decreased speed. The valve is opening with more gradient, then there's going to be loud S1. Because there is a calcification, the valve moves with less speed, there's a soft S1 in the patient. Sometimes in MCQs, to make it a little more tricky for you, they can ask it in the following fashion. First heart sound will be characterized by mitral and tricuspid valve closure. First mitral valve closes, then tricuspid valve closes. First mitral, then tricuspid valve. In a patient who's having mitral stenosis, because there's an obstruction present here, the blood to travel through this area will take more time. So I'm writing here that in mitral stenosis, exit of blood will take extra time. What I mean by exit will take extra time is more time taken for the blood to go from LA to LV. Now if there will be extra time required, that means mitral valve will have to do extra work. So therefore there will be a delayed closure of the mitral valve of the patient. Because of the fact that there is a delayed closure of the mitral valve of the patient, I am shifting this dotted black line slightly to right to say the fact that because of the fact that the mitral valve is closing relatively later, the gap between the two, M1 and T1, will become lesser. So the auscultatory funding that would be encountered in patients of mitral stenosis will also be a narrow split S1. And what you understand by the word narrow split S1 is that because there is an opening, there is an obstruction, the obstruction will contribute to that there will be more time required for the blood to go from LA to LV. And if there will be more time required for the blood to go from left atria to left ventricle, the end result would be mitral valve will close later, and a later closure of mitral valve will result in narrow split S1. In fact, if this guy will not take treatment, then this particular opening can even become smaller. If this opening will become even more smaller, blood will take even more extra time to go through this area. If blood will take even more extra time to go through this area, mitral valve will close even more later, and if it will close even more later, then the split will even become lesser. In fact, there can be a theoretical possibility that in these patients the opening might be so small that the mitral valve will close later, still more later, and might superimpose. If it will superimpose, then the auscultatory funding that will be seen in this patient will be by the name of single S1. So in patients of mitral stenosis, initially you have a narrow split, then you have a single S1 present in the patient because mitral and tricuspid valves will start closing at the same time because of the delay required in the transportation of blood. Let us look at what happens to the second heart sound in these patients. In patients of mitral stenosis, when it comes to second heart sound, mostly second heart sound will be normal. This is because of the fact that the second heart sound deals with aortic and pulmonic valve closure. And in these patients, the problem is in the mitral valve, so S2 will not be affected. However, if there is a development of pulmonary artery hypertension in the patient, then pulmonary artery hypertension in the patient will contribute to development of a loud P2 in the patient. So most of the time S2 is normal, but if there is development of pulmonary artery hypertension, then loud P2 will be an auscultatory funding. In these patients, we will also be able to hear a murmur. The reason why murmur will be heard in these patients will be because of the fact that there is a narrow opening present here. When blood will travel through this area, there will be a lot of turbulence, there will be a lot of noise created in the ventricular chamber due to entry of blood from LA to LV. Now the blood enters from the atria to the ventricle during the phase of diastole. So therefore I can say the fact that the murmur of mitral stenosis will always be a diastolic murmur, because you can see the blood is entering through a narrow opening, there is a physical obstruction, noise will be produced, so the murmur is a diastolic murmur. Therefore, when you trace out the murmur of this patient, we are hearing the lub dub heart sound, that is S1, S2 and S1. Immediately after S2 there is a sound by the name of opening snap. Opening snap deals with mitral and tricuspid valve opening. In most patients of mitral stenosis, because the pressure in the left atria is more, it will cause the valve to open with more force, so there would be a loud S1 in the patient. There would be a loud opening snap in the patient. And after the loud opening snap, which would be happening in the patient, because there is a noise, therefore the murmur that is heard in this patient would be something like this. The term that is used to describe this murmur that I have represented before you is called as mid-diastolic murmur. It is called as a mid-diastolic murmur not because it is beginning from opening snap. It is called as mid-diastolic because it is peaking in the middle of diastole. And then you can see this small secondary spike. This small secondary spike that is seen in the murmur is known as pre-systolic accentuation. So you need to remember the fact that the murmur of mitral stenosis is a mid-diastolic murmur with a pre-systolic accentuation. This murmur will increase or will be accentuated if the patient will be shifted to his left side. If you turn the patient to his left lateral decubitus position, it will result in increase in the intensity of the murmur. So that's why you read in the textbook the murmur is better heard in left lateral decubitus position, especially because if you turn the patient to his left side, the heart will come closer to the chest wall and therefore you would be able to appreciate the murmur relatively better. Therefore, in patients of mitral stenosis, you hear a loud S1. You can hear a soft S1, you could be hearing a narrow split S1, S2 can be having a loud P2 component due to PAH, then there will be a loud opening snap followed by mid-diastolic murmur with a pre-systolic accentuation. On basis of these auscultatory findings, I have narrowed down to the diagnosis of mitral stenosis and we shall now be talking about the investigations part. When it comes to investigations in patients of mitral stenosis, the investigation of choice would obviously be a transthoracic echo, but we would like to do a ECG and an X-ray in the patient first. When it comes to the ECG, all of you are familiar with the fact that the first wave of the ECG is the P wave. The initial upswing, some part of it, this indicates right atrial depolarization. And then when it comes to the downswing of the P wave, the downswing component represents left atrial depolarization. Normally the duration of the P wave is about 120 milliseconds, and because one small square in the ECG is 40 milliseconds, this will make it 3 small squares in the ECG. The vertical height of the P wave in most of the chest leads will be less than 2.5 millimeter. Therefore, P wave normal duration is 120 milliseconds, vertical height is less than 2.5 millimeter. In patients of mitral stenosis, because there will be congestion in the left atria and dilation of the left atria, the current will take more time to go across the left atria. If current will take more time to go across the left atria, then the P wave of the patient will look something like this. You can see that I have increased the duration of the P wave. I have increased the duration of the P wave because the current will take more time to go across the left atria of the patient. Therefore, one of the ECG findings that can be seen in patients of mitral stenosis can be P mitral. In P mitral, I have shown a notch in the P wave followed by development of this a so-called hump because there is an enlarged left atria. So the current will take more time to go across the left atria, resulting in P mitral. In some of these patients, the P wave might become even more bigger. If you look at and compare with the normal P wave, I have increased the vertical height this time. The second ECG finding that could be seen in these patients is P pulmonale. Please remember for MCQ sake that P mitral is going to be indicative of left atrial enlargement. P pulmonale is indicative of biatrial enlargement. In patients of mitral stenosis, initially you have left atrial enlargement, then you have a right ventricular enlargement, ultimately even right atria will be affected. So when you have a biatrial enlargement, that is when you have a P pulmonale, and when you have only a left atrial enlargement, it is P mitral. This is especially for picture-based MCQs that I am trying to draw it before you before we come to the actual picture-based questions. In patients of mitral stenosis, the second investigation that I would like to do after ECG will be a chest X-ray. And when I will be doing a chest X-ray of the patient, I will be able to see some evidence of pulmonary edema in the patient, which can be appreciated in the following fashion. In all patients of mitral stenosis, especially if they are not on treatment or on inadequate treatment, then if you look at the X-ray of the patient, you will be able to see evidence of pulmonary edema. Now, how do you know pulmonary edema, or what are the questions asked in the exam are like this? One could be like, what is the earliest radiological finding of pulmonary edema? So because there is going to be congestion in the lungs of the patient, when you see the X-ray of the patient, you will basically be able to see rather congested pulmonary veins. Therefore, MCQ wise, if they ask you, what is the earliest radiological finding of pulmonary edema, your primary answer will be prominent upper lobe veins. In the MCQ, it will be deliberately written wrongly as prominent lower lobe veins, whereas it is prominent upper lobe veins, which is the first radiological finding. This is also known as antler sign. It looks like horns on the head of an animal. It is also referred to as mustache sign, but those are, I would say, more of radiological terms, antler sign or mustache sign. It is mostly what we call in medicine as prominent upper lobe veins. Subsequently, as the congestion in the heart will increase, it will also contribute to development of increase in cardiothoracic ratio. If you see and compare with what I have drawn here, I have tried to show that there would be congestion in the lungs and congestion in the heart, so the heart will become bigger. Therefore, the second radiological finding that can be seen in these patients would be increased cardiothoracic ratio. Normally, in you and me, heart occupies approximately 50% of the space in the chest. In this patient, the cardiothoracic ratio will become more than 0.5, which indicates a cardiomegaly, which indicates a failure of the heart of the patient. As the congestion will increase, there will also be a development of pulmonary edema, which will rather contribute to the fact that there would be a whiteness in the X-ray. Now, if you look at the radiological findings in the patient, you will notice the fact that there will be whiteness, which is pulmonary edema developing in the patient, especially in and around the cardiac borders. The way I am shading it before you, I am trying to explain that this looks like a wings of a bat. So this that you can get in an X-ray in a picture-based MCQ is known as bat wing pulmonary edema. This is a very characteristic term. Bat wing pulmonary edema is diagnostic of cardiogenic pulmonary edema. You are not going to get this in ARDS because ARDS, let me say after swine flu, is non-cardiogenic. In non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema, the radiological findings are different. In a subsequent class, we will also study regarding what are the radiological findings for ARDS, but especially when it comes to cardiogenic. Heart is involved, you would always be having this characteristic word written in theory or given in a picture-based MCQ to you, bat wing pulmonary edema. This bat wing pulmonary edema can be explained in a different way. Normally on an X-ray, the lungs will look black and the heart will look white. I said the heart will look white, the lungs will look black. Here what you will notice will be that the whiteness of the heart will extend over into the lungs. I repeat again, heart will be looking white on X-ray. The whiteness of the heart will extend into the lungs, and therefore a radiological term known for this would be known as Silhouette sign. Silhouette sign would imply that the cardiac borders are not appreciated properly, and the reason why they are not appreciated is because the whiteness would extend into the lungs of the patient. So all patients of mitral stenosis, depending upon their severity of illness, would be having some evidence of pulmonary edema. But if the question is asked as what is the investigation of choice for diagnosis of patients of mitral stenosis, then the investigation of choice for diagnosis of mitral stenosis will be answered as a transthoracic echocardiography, where we will be able to evaluate the size of the mitral valve as well. For management of patients of mitral stenosis, if the size of the opening is less than 1.5 square centimeter, we call it a severe mitral stenosis. In severe mitral stenosis, because the opening is very, very small, therefore the pulmonary edema of the patient will usually not improve with medication or will persist in spite of medication. So if the question is asked as what is the best treatment for severe mitral stenosis, then to treat the pulmonary edema component of the patient, we will have to change the mitral valve of the patient, or we will have to dilate this opening. So in the MCQ there can be two options. One can be a prosthetic valve, second can be a mitral valve valvotomy. The basic point is we deploy a balloon in this area and we dilate the small opening, and therefore in the MCQ, if the simple question is what is the treatment of choice for severe mitral stenosis, it is a mitral valvotomy. In a mitral valvotomy, we are basically going to deploy a balloon and we are going to dilate the mitral valve orifice. This procedure would cost maybe 50,000-60,000 rupees in a government hospital in India. However, a lot of poor parents might not have that kind of money. If they do not get their child operated upon, then this patient will start developing calcification in the mitral valve. If there is a development of calcification in the mitral valve and the patient or the MCQ is mentioning that patient is having calcified severe mitral stenosis, then you have to appreciate as a doctor that when you will deploy this balloon in a calcified valve, the valve will break into pieces. like a biscuit breaks into pieces. When you deploy this balloon, it will cause the valve to break into pieces, and all those calcified fragments will go towards the brain and cause embolic stroke. So if in a question is asking you regarding calcified severe mitral stenosis, then you will say valvotomy is contraindicated. I repeat again, valvotomy is contraindicated because if you deploy the balloon here, the valve will break into pieces like a cookie breaks into pieces or a cake crumbles, and therefore valvotomy is contraindicated. And you will answer that the treatment of choice for this patient will be a change of the mitral valve, a brand new valve, that would be a prosthetic valve. Just to see whether you got this concept or not, especially for calcified mitral stenosis, I would like to make it clear before you. Let me say hypothetically MCQ says patient is having mitral stenosis with mitral regurgitation. Because the MCQ says patient is having MS with MR, if I'm going to do a balloon valvotomy in the patient, I'm going to deploy a balloon in the mitral valve area. When I will deploy the balloon in the mitral valve area, obviously mitral stenosis will improve, but mitral regurgitation will worsen. So balloon valvotomy would be contraindicated even in patients of MS with MR. If you get a question that says what are the contraindications for a balloon valvotomy, one of the contraindications is MS with MR. Second contraindication is what I just taught you, calcified mitral stenosis or calcified severe mitral stenosis. The third contraindication, just to be remembered for the sake of MCQ, will be patient having left atrial thrombus. The logic is that if a patient is having a LA thrombus and if the mitral valve orifice is small, then the thrombus will have a tendency to remain inside only. But when you will deploy a balloon and dilate the opening, then this thrombus can go into the systemic circulation and cause an embolic stroke. So there are three contraindications for a balloon valvotomy, which would be MS with MR, a calcified mitral stenosis, and a left atrial thrombus. Please remember, if the question is asking you regarding treatment for mitral stenosis, the question does not mention the word severe, then the first answer for the management of a patient of plain mitral stenosis would be medical management. What I mean by medical management would be that you would prescribe some medicines to this patient for treating the pulmonary edema component of the patient. For this, you can put the patient on diuretics. Now, since most of the diuretics cause hypokalemia, therefore you can put the patient on spironolactone, and you can put the patient on ACE inhibitors, and you can reduce the pulmonary edema component of the patient by reducing the preload and the up. So the question is simply mentioning mitral stenosis, medical treatment is recommended. If the question uses the word severe mitral stenosis, then the answer would be primarily given as percutaneous mitral balloon valvotomy. I use the word percutaneous because we're going to go via the cubital vein, go into the right side of the heart, deploy a balloon from the right to the left, and then deploy a balloon and get rid of the mitral stenosis lesion. If the question is mentioning regarding pulmonary artery hypertension, which could be occurring with mitral stenosis, then the perspectives will change in a sense that extra medicines have to be given to the patient. Pulmonary artery hypertension will always have a loud P2, and pulmonary artery hypertension will always have a morbidity which will be increased as compared to a plain case of mitral stenosis, primarily because the pressure in the pulmonary artery is more, so therefore the heart will have to do extra work to send blood to the lungs, and therefore the pulmonary blood flow would be restricted or compromised in these patients. You should be aware of the normal pressure in the pulmonary artery. The normal pressure in the pulmonary artery mean is about 15 millimeters of mercury. And definition of pulmonary artery hypertension is pressure in the pulmonary artery more than 25 millimeters of mercury at rest, or more than 30 millimeters of mercury on exercise. For MCQ, you need to remember normal is 15, higher than 25 is pulmonary artery hypertension. For these patients, the first line drug that you will be using would be calcium channel blocker like amlodipine. After calcium channel blocker